everybody, can you see and hear me? Thumbs up if you can see and hear me okay. Beautiful, powerful, audacious women. Good evening. I hope you are feeling good. Thank you, Nina Simone and Black Music Month. Welcome to our anniversary virtual power sip, Notes to Self for emotional self-care, managing triggers, and setting boundaries. I'm Glenda Francis. I'm an empowerment specialist and founder of Audacious Inner Works Institute for Personal Development. I'm delighted to be hosting this SIP this evening in partnership with Royal Roots. Let me get all of you on the screen. There you go. In partnership with Royal Roots Company, purveyors of refined spiritual wellness products. And later this evening, we're going to be, and I see Corinne McLaughlin is here, the founder and head of Royal Roots. Wonderful. And later this evening, we're going to be raffling off a wellness basket. But first, in the spirit of our SIP, I'm going to raise my glass in tonight's first toast to all of you for being who you are, for showing up, and for your willingness to do the audacious inner works. Cheers. I salute you. So I'm actually drinking cranberry spritzer. I feared if I attempted to drink our featured classic French 75 and attempted to host this evening, you would be well within your rights to request a refund. So we must all know our strengths and limitations. So cheers to cranberry seltzer. Wonderful. Allow me to share a little bit about the work that I do as an empowerment specialist. So my mission is really about facilitating the empowerment and self-agency of all those who are willing. I'm particularly passionate about working with women, young women and girls, Black women and Black girls in particular. And at the heart of my work is really supporting them to unpack some of the pain and recurring scripts born out of systemic discrimination and cultural conditioning, to reframe limiting mindsets and fears, and to tap into their deep reservoir of infinite potential in order to achieve more powerful, mindful living. And I engage this mission work through my life coaching practice and my programs and institutes and events such as tonight's SIP. So I'm delighted that you have all joined us for our anniversary SIP. And now I want to go to the chat and I want to meet all of you. So let's see who is here with us this evening. We've got Tony Cameron, who I know very well. Tony has UWS New York. What is Upper West Side? Oh, that is so Manhattan-centric. Oh my word, so New York-centric. Upper West Side, New York City. And Tony, tell us, why are you joining us this evening all the way from the Upper West Side?
From the UWS. Well, I wanted to join you to celebrate your year. I think I was here for your first session and I just wanted to come back and congratulate you and to see the wonderful work you're doing and to meet some new people. So
thank you, Tony. Thank you so much for being here. Cheers. We've got Rachel from down under Melbourne, Australia. Rachel, welcome. Tell us why you're joining this evening.
Hi, everybody. Just to add in some multinational presence for Glenda. Yeah, I think we can never learn enough notes to on self-care. I self-profess not very good at it, or keeping it constant and top of mind. And yeah, just to observe how the program works.
Welcome. And Rachel, so you're in Australia, so I know it's already Saturday for you there.
Yes.
Around what time is it there?
So it started at 8 a.m. So I also, like you, decided not to open a bottle of French champagne, but I just have a morning cup of tea.
Cheers to your morning cup of tea. And
Thank
thank you
you.
so much for being here so early in the morning. I just want to say a word about Rachel. Rachel and I actually met almost a year ago in our International Coaching Academy program where we were studying coaching. It was people from all over the world participating in this coaching program. And so Rachel and I participate in a number of sessions, and we hope to collaborate. So thank you, Rachel, for being here. All right, we've got Imani Paris from Brooklyn, New York. Hey, Imani, tell us why you're joining this evening.
Well, I'm here to celebrate again. Like my sister echoed earlier, it's been a year. The world's opening up, and so we're the virtual SIP. It's a year since we were last here, so I wanted to catch up, see what everyone's up to, and just kind of like create space again and show up.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for being here and showing up. Absolutely. The world is reopening and a lot is happening. Last year we had quite a turnout. And I think this year with graduations and people trying to get back to normalcy, we don't have the same crowd. But my motto is 4, 5, or 500. Onward we go, and we focus on serving the people who are here in front of us doing that work. So thank you for being here. And we've got Corinne McLaughlin from New Jersey. And Corinne, tell us why you are here this evening.
Hi, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. Glenda is my aunt, and she is absolutely phenomenal. Every chance I can get, I'm trying to suck up some of this amazing knowledge that she has and wisdom that she is spreading. So that's why I'm here. In addition to being the founder of Royal Roots, so I'm here with my basket. Really excited to interact with you guys and for this to go to its right home. So thank you for sharing space with us, and I'm excited to get going tonight.
And thank you for partnering with us, Corinne. Last year, Corinne was both a panelist. She was one of the millennial panelists. We had a multi-generational panel of women, and she was the younger and on the millennial side. But during that event, she talked to us about the incredible work of recalibrating that she was doing during the pandemic, really tapping into her spirituality and creativity, and really took the time to rebrand her company, Royal Roots. And she presented to us the inspiration, the genesis for that work, as she shared some of her products, and that work has grown so much. So I thought it was only fitting to come back a year later and again feature one of the panelists from that session. So thank you, Corinne. We are expecting at least 2 other people, one of whom I know is a teacher, works in Brooklyn, but lives in Jersey. She left Brooklyn at 3 o'clock, and at 4:30, she was still stuck in traffic, nowhere near to being home in Jersey. So she might be joining us very late. But in the meantime, we're going to get going with our program. So what I'd like to do tonight, I'm going to be going between sharing my screen with you and then trying to have as much FaceTime, if you will, so I can see you on bigger screens versus the tiny screen. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. And if I fumble it a little bit, just I appreciate your patience. All right, so let me go back to my screen share with you. Can you see my screen? Thumbs up. You can see my screen? Great. All right. So here's our agenda. We're going to get grounded in some opening rituals. And part of that opening ritual is to set norms for how we want to engage. And then we're going to have our opening discussion, notes to self. So Rachel set us off in the beginning where she talked about, I could always use more notes to self. And so that's what we're going to be looking at. Where are we in terms of our notes to self? And what do they mean for us? How do we really live those notes? And then we're going to have an exploration of triggers, and that's where we're going to really spend the bulk of our evening, our time this evening, really talking about our triggers, trying to figure out what's underneath them, what sets us off, and setting intentions for how we actually want to live. And then we're going to connect that to setting boundaries. That's also an area where so many of us struggle. But we're going to look at something that I put together called a boundaries bill of rights, that you have rights when it comes to boundaries and boundary setting. So we're going to take a look at some of that. And then, of course, you're going to create your own notes to self. So, Rachel, you'll have an opportunity to reprioritize and say, here is what I'm committed to doing to take care of myself. And then we'll close the evening with some reflections and, of course, the Royal Roots Company Wellness Basket Raffle. Right? All right. Terrific. So I'm going to stop my screen share here. And I'd like for us to begin with some mindful breathing. One of the opening rituals of my sponsored event is mindful breathing. And this is a practice about connecting us to our breath in order to center ourselves. It is a precious gift that you can give to yourself anytime, anywhere. And so I'd like to invite you to join me in some mindful breathing. Please begin by positioning your body in a way that feels comfortable for you, and you may close your eyes if you prefer. Please follow along with my monologue. Take a deep breath in through the nose and slowly release through the mouth. As you exhale, lean into the breath and let your shoulders drop. Breathe in deeply and hold, and slow release. Now, breathe in again deeply and hold. Slow release. Breathe in again and hold. Slow release. With your eyes closed, continue breathing on your own. I'd like you to start from the top of your head down to your toes to scan your body for any tension, constriction, discomfort. And I want you to imagine seeing yourself sending your breath to those parts so that they can release. You might have some tension in your neck, maybe sitting all day at a screen, your shoulders, your back, your stomach, hips or thighs. Scan and send your breath to those parts. Now I'd like you to focus on the words of this affirmation. I am well. In this moment, I choose wellness. I release all forms of negative thoughts and toxicity that may have manifested in my body. I may be facing a mental or physical challenge, but I need not be defined or circumscribed by it. I release fear. I release tension. I release dis-ease. I am power and beauty and light and infinite potential. As I manage my thoughts, I manage my wellness. Breathe deeply into that affirmation. As you breathe, I'd also like to request that you make space to offer praise and honor to the ancestors. On the eve of Juneteenth, for our guests who are not of African descent, you may pay silent tribute to your own ancestors or just continue breathing. On the eve of Juneteenth, which will now become commemorated as a national holiday some 150 years post-slavery, we especially express deep gratitude for our ancestors' incredible sacrifices and legacies of resistance that made our lives and paths possible. We are so grateful for the awareness that when we align with this rich, powerful history and the God within us, we are powerful beyond measure. We are the torchbearers. May we be inspired by their stories, sacrifices, and lives to achieve no less than they did by committing to a life of excellence and service. May we be equally reminded that none of us is free until all of us are free. We thank you and honor you, not just with our words, but with a life well lived. May it be so. Ashe, ashe, ashe. When you're ready, you may slowly open your eyes. Thank you for your willing participation. How are you feeling? Feeling good? Cheers. All right. So this evening, we're going to be engaging in some vulnerable and hopefully transparent conversations about our growth areas and intentions for personal development. And in order to facilitate conversations that feel respectful and inclusive, it's important to set norms of agreement. So I'm going to share with you some suggested norms. I'd like you to read them independently. And if you're in agreement, you can give me a thumbs up or you can show me your hands. So I'm going to go back and share the screen with you now. All right, here are the norms. Please read independently. I see Rachel nodding. Great, thanks, Rachel. Tony, I see Imani, and Corinne gave a thumbs up. All right, terrific. So, all right, let's get into it. Here's a quote by writer, educator, artist Lisa Congdon that inspired both the title and theme of tonight's step. Notes to self. You cannot and will not please everyone. Full stop. By taking care of your own needs, you will sometimes disappoint or anger other people. How other people react to your choices is not your responsibility. The greatest responsibility you have is to your own well-being and happiness. Full stop. What is your immediate gut reaction to these notes? And you can either talk out loud or type some notes in the chat. But since we are a small group, maybe we can just kind of talk out loud. Immediate reactions to these notes. Imani, are you ready to go?
Yeah, I was kind of mulling over how other people react to your choice is not your responsibility, because sometimes you do have a sense of guilt, especially if you're not agreeing to something they've asked of you. And, you know, you have empathy towards how they might feel, disappointments and so forth. So my mind was just mulling over, it's not your responsibility for how they're feeling. So that was just forefront in my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's almost like this immediate, this kind of guttural reaction, right? Like we're taking a stand for what's important to us, and other people have a reaction to that. And sometimes we allow their reaction to influence what we do or don't do, right? And then that can create some triggers for us in ways that we may not know about. So yeah, like I can make choices, and what other people do, you know, with my choice, that's not my concern. Yeah. Anybody else? Tony, you're
Yeah,
off mute. Did you want to share? Oh,
Oh, sorry, go first.
I think the number 4 for me, the greatest responsibility you have is to your own well-being and happiness. Seems to go against a lot of the major religions in the world. And this idea that you're always doing for others before you do for yourself
yeah.
seems to flip it on its head. And so I think some of the myths we grow up with and we live with actually hurt us eventually because we're always postponing our own happiness to take care of other people.
Yeah. So it feels, because of cultural conditioning, it feels counterintuitive to think that our responsibility is to ourselves. And that is the greatest responsibility, filling our own bucket. Because if in fact we are going to be able to care for other people and be of service in the world, we must have something to bring to the table. And we can't come with a depleted sense of self and expect to have investment in return in others. So yes, we are responsible for caring for ourselves. But you think about those of us who were socialized to care for others, especially mothers, teachers, and nurses, right? How we struggle with this idea that we have to also care for ourselves. So it is turning this myth, this cultural conditioned expectation um, that we should care for others before ourselves on its head, for sure. Yeah. Rachel?
Yeah, I had a couple of comments just to follow on from Tony's comment too. It really resonated with me, number 4, that is so true or so key. But I think I also maybe hide behind the fact that it is easier to often be responsible for others and hide in being busy around all of that rather than actually taking the time to do it for myself. And then when I was reading it, I was just thinking about how linked number 2 and number 3 actually are. That by putting the time and effort into yourself, you're often disappointing, and you worry about how other people then react to your choice. So they're just so interwoven in the number 2 and 3.
Rachel, when you talked about sort of hiding behind this busyness, what's behind that for you? Have you had some time to think about that?
Yeah, there's some, I suppose, decision making and some issues that I have happening for me in my life at the moment, and I find that it's funny because when I actually often walk with my sister once a week, she asks me about it and where things are at, and if I haven't moved things along, I realize how I often avoid trying to deal with some of these things and in sort of taking care of my own well-being and happiness, and end up worrying about everybody else's before my own, because I think sometimes it is easier.
And it's easier because, so that's an interesting perspective, that it's easier to care for other people and not care for yourself. And so that perhaps speaks to a conditioned reality, right? That you're so programmed that that's your script, right? To look outward and care for others before you care for yourself. Yeah, interesting. Corinne, did you want to weigh in on this?
Yes, so very similarly to Antonia, I think that was her name. Sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, but I immediately also thought, like, wow, we live in a cultural society where you are put down almost for believing to do these things regularly for yourself. To be you're seen as selfish if you're taking a moment to make sure that emotionally, physically, mentally, spiritually, you're in line. But even as a newer mom, my daughter's 2.5, I sometimes have to remind myself of this regularly, to prioritize myself. If I have an hour or 2 a day where I'm taking to do something for myself, to not feel guilty about that. So it's hard to like not have that guilt, and still know that I need to also prioritize my own self-care and well-being as well. So these were helpful.
Yeah, and I recently wrote a blog and produced a video on this idea that self-care is not equivalent to selfishness, right? That's a perspective that has been levied for so long, that if you care for yourself, which is your God-given responsibility for your life, right? You think about that. This is your one and only life in this particular dimension as we know it, that it is your God-given responsibility to care for yourself, particularly if you view yourself as having a purpose and wanting to be in service, right? So this idea that we have to care for ourselves, but there's some guilt around that. And so people say you're being selfish when you care for yourself. So selfishness is really about centering the self exclusively, right? Re- Having no regard for anyone else. And so when we talk about self-care, what we're saying is we're taking care of ourselves and given to ourselves so that we can care for others and do the work that we're passionate about, because we can't come from a depleted plate. So it's self-care for self and for others, whereas selfishness is solely for the self. So I think it's time for us to really start pushing back against this notion that self-care is equivalent to selfishness. That is a very destructive myth, and it's a perspective that keeps a lot of us afraid to take care of ourselves. So, which leads me to this question. If you had to start discerning some themes based on what we have been sharing already about these notes, what are some things that we can say that are emerging?
There's guilt associated with self-care.
Mm-hmm.
Heard the word guilt a few times.
Yeah, so guilt, so the feeling of guilt is coming up, and the feeling of guilt, where does that feeling of guilt come from? What drives it?
I think that there are expectations set by other people, and it's part of the culture you live in. And so this idea that you cannot please everyone,
Mm-hmm.
um, it's I think what women have been trained to do. I mean, women of my generation, maybe it's changed a little bit,
No.
but you exist to please other people, whether it's how you look, how you speak. You never want to step outside the bounds, whatever those bounds are. And I think that's where the guilt comes from. The minute you step outside that, it's like committed a sin.
Mm-hmm. So it's being born out of some belief, some perspective, some mindset that we're holding that says this is the way that you're supposed to be. And so, yeah, so the feeling is being generated by the belief that we're holding, which then creates the obstacle for us to care for ourselves and to really come from a full plate and to be productive. So we're hearing mindset coming up there as a theme, and we're hearing the kinds of emotions and feelings that are then generated from those from that particular mindset. Yes. What else did you discern was coming up from our brief share here?
Just how to put yourself first sometimes, you know. I think, again, just building on guilt, we always feel like we have to be looking at doing other things. And sometimes for you, you know, like you're worthy, you deserve it. And you know, framing is not being selfish, it's caring for yourself so that you can pour into others.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
So,
sometimes on learning how you don't always have to be busy for other people, you can be busy for yourself.
wow. Wow. So there are two things that you're saying there that I think are so important, Imani. One is this idea of unworthiness, that so many of us, whether we articulate that, are aware of it, it's what drives the bus for so many of us, that we don't think that we are worthy, that we are enough, that we're entitled to care for ourselves. Yeah. And so that is also a mindset that causes us to make decisions that don't honor who we are. But then I heard you say, you flip that. You're like, you know what? It's okay to be busy for me. So there's the reframing of that negative perspective that created an obstacle. You're reframing and say, I'm exerting my self agency here. And I deserve to care for myself as a human being, as a spiritual being, as a child of God, as a woman of purpose. Yeah. So
Yeah, it's
really,
something because a lot of times it's like you let's say you're being asked to do something and you plan to just maybe laze around the house and watch Netflix and pick up on a new series and someone's asking something of you and you'll weigh, oh well they're asking versus me just being at home as if that's not important and you'll just
yeah,
feel like, you know what, let me go do this favor, but then you're exerting yourself, you're getting more distressed out as if you being at home taking care of just nothing, just whether you're going to be busy or whether you're not, you're worth it, you're worth that choice, whatever the choice you make for yourself, that you can stand in it and say, you know what, I'm not able to, and not feel guilty, because the guilt is what eats you up after, you know.
yeah. And Rachel, it looks like you wanted to chime in.
No, I was just reflecting on Karen saying it looks like we're taking care of nothing, but actually she had said just before that that it's okay to be home watching Netflix or doing whatever it is you choose to do, but that's actually taking care of yourself. It's not nothing. That's why I was just like thinking
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
because
saying
folks
all
will
the
say,
right
oh well,
things, but
you're
you're
not
saying all
going.
the right things, but you don't necessarily, you still, there's still a shift to happen because you still think it's nothing.
hmm
Yeah, still feeling unworthy, right? Not putting
Yeah.
value to that.
mm Yeah, so that's a really nice one right there. And here's something I want to respond to offer is that if you have a mindset of people pleasing, people's validation of you is really important. Once you begin to make that shift to care for yourself and people then have a reaction to that, if you are not strong in yourself, those emotions, those feelings will overcome you. And you will find that you become paralyzed. And more importantly, you get triggered. You might find that you're getting triggered and you may not know what's going on. And you're getting triggered is because you're trying to shift, right? But there's this influence that's sort of drawing you back. And so that's where I want to take our conversation today around triggers. Because when we become triggered, those triggers really prevent us from taking care of ourselves, from self-regulating, and more appropriately, setting those kind of boundaries to protect ourselves. So I want to turn our attention now to this idea of triggers, right? Because they tend to really challenge our ability to self-regulate and, as I said, set boundaries. I created a video on triggers about 2 years ago, and I'd like for us to look at the first 3 minutes and 25 seconds, and then we'll discuss it on the other side. So, okay, hang on. You're not going to hear it from here. Let me do share. Uh, and video open. Everybody see and hear that? Give me a thumbs up if you can see and hear it. Okay, great.
Hi, this is Glenda Francis, your empowerment coach. Allow me to set the stage for today's conversation. Situation number one. You're driving in your car, listening to some music, vibing, feeling really good. And suddenly, in typical New York fashion, somebody cuts you off. You immediately flip the bird and wish all manner of harm on the person. Situation number two. You're grocery shopping, perhaps in your local supermarket or in a much larger venue like Costco. There are people and bodies everywhere. And it seems that people absentmindedly leave their carts in the middle of the aisle, blocking your path. You've had enough, and you've decided to tell off one of the culprits. Situation number three. There's this coworker at your job who seems to say and do things that get under your skin. She really knows how to provoke you. The mere mention of her name and you roll your eyes and suck your teeth. And the mere sight of her, your danders are up. You're ready to duke it out. So what do these situations have in common? One key word: triggers. So, what are triggers, you might ask? Triggers are things that cause other things to happen. They're levers, they are obstacles, but more importantly, they are information because they provide feedback for us on areas where we perhaps need to grow and heal. So the real problem is not the person who cut you off. It's not the woman who blocked your path. It's not the annoying coworker, but it's what's underneath that's causing you to react in that way. And if you allowed yourself to investigate, you would probably realize that there's some unresolved, lingering memory that's connected to hurt, to pain, to anger, to shame, to guilt. So we all get triggered, but the goal is to become aware of what's causing us to be triggered, to inquire, why am I reacting in this way? Here's the thing. Triggers carry with them both physiological and emotional components. So you can feel in your body when you're being triggered. You become flustered. You become angry. You become agitated. You begin to lose patience. Your breathing becomes shorter, becomes heavier. So these are indication that you are being challenged in some way, that you are being triggered. When that happens, take a pause, take a breath, and inquire, why am I being triggered? What is underneath it? What is the root cause? That's where our work is, to get to that underlying memory and really weed out the hurt, the pain, the disappointment, the guilt, the shame. So inquiring of the root causes will eventually lead to the answers that you are desiring. And
Right. Gonna stop there. All right. I saw Tony sort of do this when I talked about the road rage person cutting you off. So I'm wondering, did any of that sound familiar to you? What resonated with you in terms of triggers?
For me, I think having expectations about the way things are supposed to be
Mm,
and it not being that way. And it's like, how dare you not be the way you're supposed to be because here I am. And so it's unrealistic expectations of everything around you. And then that triggers different emotions depending on what the situation is. But I think some of it comes down to expectations of perfection. Like things are supposed
mm,
to be perfect because I'm perfect and I live in a perfect world. Oh, wait, I don't.
mhm,
So, and I'm not. And that's where a lot of the
mhm,
frustration and anger comes from.
mhm. Yeah, that elusive drive for perfection and this idea that things have to be my way, that my way is the only way, is the right way. And so there's this kind of intolerance that sort of drives what's happening. And usually that's connected to some kind of conditioning, some kind of upbringing where we weren't allowed to make mistakes, right? We may have been severely criticized. We weren't allowed to experiment. And so we grew into these habits that became who we are, right? And we just say that this is our personality, this is who we are. But that personality has been shaped and influenced by cultural conditioning. And so that's why we take the time to unpack, like, what's behind my drive for perfection? Why does it have to be my way or the highway? Oh, that was one of my big things all the time, right? My way. It's this way, no other way. It has to be this particular precise, right? That's an area that we need to look at. Yeah. What else is coming up there around the triggers?
I was just reflecting on what you said around trying to take a pause or a breath
Mm,
to try and understand what's beneath it. But I was just trying to think of some of my trigger moments, and that time and space is so small. Like you have to really try and find that opportunity to catch it before you do react. So yeah, I just have to like think a little bit more about how I suppose the more you become aware of them, the bigger the space might become, but it's usually you react pretty quickly because it's like a fire in your belly and it just blows up.
Mm-hmm. So is that automatic default way of reacting? But what you said there is really key, Rachel, and this is why we do that self-inquiry, because the more you become aware of what that specific trigger is, and you know your pattern of behavior, how you respond to that trigger, then there's that opening, right? Between the reaction, that stimulus and that reaction, there's that moment that you can interject mindfulness and say, whoa, I'm doing what I always do again, right? My pattern is right here. Do I want to do something different? So we can challenge our automatic response. And that's a big part of what we're going to be looking at today. So being aware of the trigger and saying, what do I want instead? And that moment to pause and breathe allows you to interject a new vision and to grow into a new way of being. Yes. So I've heard Tony's trigger. It's a lot like mine around perfection, intolerance. I've heard Rachel talking about having that awareness so you can create more space to respond versus react, to interrupt that default pattern. Anything else, Corinne or Imani? What came up for you as you heard that video, or what might be one of your key triggers that you really want to develop more awareness around and interrupt your habitual way of responding?
I think
Go ahead, you can go.
I think just like Rachel mentioned, having that space where you're knowing it's such a small window before you totally give into your emotion, right? Before you can take a mental break and say, wait, I can dictate how this is going. So do I leave the situation? I was thinking of the situation that you mentioned in the supermarket where the cart was there and you just have to go tell them. And it's like, do you just move the cart and simply go about? Is that like that mindful break? Or it just gets you where you're like, this is ridiculous. And you just, and then it becomes combative. Just the two, forces. Do you just ignore it, fix it, or I guess bring it up to the person and create this issue where now you could have said, oh, I could have walked away, because it can escalate into a bigger situation. So it's just like choosing what to do and being okay with if you don't do anything, I guess, is what I'm saying. If you choose to walk away and not tell them about the cart.
But what I hear coming up there, Imani, is about intention, about it, choosing how you want to respond. And that Costco one, that's me. I shop in Costco's pre-pandemic. I would be in Costco's, and it's madness if you've been in any of these big venues. And I would just find myself getting, these people are so inconsiderate. Why can't they move their carts? And I'm giving people the evil eye, it's like, and I'm sending these people darts. And so it was like, okay, Glenda, you're going to Costco and you know what's going to happen. What's your intention? How do you want to be in that moment? Do you want to be reacting and finding yourself getting flustered, or do you want to respond? So the awareness, setting the intention, and then deciding how you're going to handle the situation. And I have to tell you, that's one area that I've worked on. And I am less bothered by carts, because now I'm like, people are people. And so when people actually move their carts over, I smile and I say, thank you. Yeah, so I look out for those people who actually do that to thank them, right? The carts are going to be everywhere.
It was you. I knew it was you on the news when I watched those women fighting for those toilet paper rolls in the supermarket. I knew it.
Exactly. So having the intention, you have that awareness. Now, what's the intention for the choices you're going to make? Responding versus reacting. Corinne, I see that smile there.
Yes, so the video and also what a lot of what everyone else here said reminded me of just a lot of my triggers come up from wanting to be in full control of a situation. And so
Mm,
even that it's almost like an illusion to think that you can externally control someone else's behavior, whether it's the cart, whether it's somebody cutting you off, you can. But the
Mm.
real test is to have the internal set of controls so that you can like shift, or as you said, decide, set your intention, and then you act on what that is. But to be able to release that belief of the need to have full control of everything, I think is critical for me.
mhm. So here's another perspective coming up, right? Like I am in control of everything. That is an illusion. And that sets you up for real disappointment and heartache. We can never control other people, nor should we desire to do that. And so once you start to relinquish that,
Mhm.
I don't control other people, but I can control me. That's my self-care, right? Once you
Mm.
start to
Mm.
flip that perspective, I am responsible for me. That's how I care for myself, my thoughts, my actions. Then you think differently. Okay, what can I do here? That's really within my control. So that's flipping. It's an awareness of your mindset and then flipping that mindset. That's what you really did there. That reframing is what allows you to make that shift, right? Absolutely. Yes. All right.
Mhm.
So let me tell you what we're going to do, because we're going to do some digging today. We started out. So I created a worksheet to support us in understanding the source of our triggers and addressing them. Okay. We're going to do some digging. How far and how much and how far you want to dig is entirely up to you, and we will be here to support you. But I want you to bear in mind that the more honest you can be about your triggers and in confronting them, the better positioned you will be to release what's behind the the triggers, and grow into new ways of being. As Iyanla Vanzant, spiritual coach and guru, is fond of saying, and I've adopted that in my own work, she says, feel, deal, heal. You got to feel it. You can't pretend it doesn't exist. Suppressing it doesn't work. Whether you pretend it doesn't exist or you suppress it, you're still having a subconscious relationship with that issue. It leaks out. So you've got to feel it, no matter how uncomfortable it may be, no matter how hard. You've got to commit to dealing with it. And that's the only way we can heal, HEAL, from it. Feel, deal, heal. All right. So I don't know if you were able to access the worksheet on Eventbrite. Um, the link is in the chat. I'm going to bring that up for you if you want to work from, if you want to print out the actual worksheet, but it's also in the PowerPoint. So we're going to do this as a guided activity. All right. So I'm going to go back to my screen share. Let me go here. And let me go to the chat and repost it for you. So let's do this. Copy and paste. Okay, so I've just repasted the triggers worksheet if you'd like to print it out and complete it on your own. Otherwise, we can work from what's here in the PowerPoint. So there are 3 sections to the worksheet: naming the trigger, getting to the underlying root causes, and towards a new vision, what we want to do about managing those triggers, right? So we're going to take one section at a time, but we're going to first ground ourselves in a definition of triggers. So when I worked with Tony as a math consultant for an organization, this particular book was one of the resources that we use, and it's a resource that I go back to often. I thought it was so groundbreaking the way these authors were thinking about feedback, and they focused a lot on triggers. And so I wanted to lift the definition that they use about triggers because I thought it was so spot on. And so they said that triggers are obstacles, right? And we've been talking about that today. They get in our way, they prevent us from self regulating and accomplishing what we want. But they then said they're not only obstacles, they're information. It's a kind of map because they help us locate the source of the trouble. And when we understand our triggers and we're able to sort out what sets them off, then we're better able to manage our reactions, right? So this comes from the book, Thanks for the Feedback, The Science and Art of Receiving Feedback Well. And so obviously in their book, the context was one of the reasons why people are unable to deal with feedback well. There are different kinds of feedback, but people get triggered. So we're not looking necessarily at the feedback aspect, but this idea of understanding what a trigger is. It's both an obstacle, but it's also information that can help us manage the triggers. All right. So this is the first part of the worksheet. Yeah. So some of you might have already have, as you shared tonight, a specific person or situation in mind. If you don't already have that in mind, I'd like you to call it up. Think of a specific person or situation that you really struggle with, that you want to better manage. So give yourself a moment to see that person, that situation, feel the emotions when you're being triggered. So give yourself a moment there to really call up a particular person or situation. If you have a specific person or situation in mind, could you just give me a thumbs up? Oh, we're ready to go. Great. Here we go. I become triggered when person or situation says or does what? Try to be as specific as you can. When I'm triggered, I feel, name the feelings, name the emotions. What are you feeling in your body when you get triggered? Because that's where it is in your body. And then how do you react? I react. We're not responding, right? There's that default. What is your default when you're triggered by this particular person or situation? I react by saying or doing what? All right. Have we completed the first part? Okay. Would anybody like to kind of just take us through this first section? When you become triggered, I become triggered when, how do you react, how do you feel, and how do you react? Who would like to share that with us? No volunteers? Boo! All right, let me share mine. Oh, Tony, are you going to volunteer? All right, go, Tony. Thank you for being so brave. Where's my reaction feature here? Let me, where's my,
No, I think
ah,
I'm reading over it and thinking this sounds pretty moronic.
it sounds what?
What I wrote sounds moronic. It doesn't like it's something that triggers you, and then you look at it and you're like, wow, is this really what triggers me? How pathetic.
Mm,
So then I start judging myself, but it's something very simple, and it's with my mother.
mm,
But when I say something, she usually responds in a way that's like, oh, that's awful, or you shouldn't. And for some reason, that stuff makes me crazy. And I don't know what, and it triggers something in me, and it's also irrational. And that's why when I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, geez, I'm a pretty silly person here, because this, it feels like it isn't deep, and yet it's really deep. And I think
mhm,
that's the thing, is getting to why is this thing actually triggering me,
mhm,
consistently triggering me.
mhm,
And so that's where I'm coming from. That's why I didn't want to share it, because it didn't look.
mhm. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that, Tony. And I want to say that it's not a silly thing. So I want to encourage you to not judge yourself in that way. So we're going to get at what is it about your mother's behavior that sets you off? And by the way, how many of us can relate to either a mother or somebody who's always, you shouldn't have, and this is the way it should go? Yeah, there's something about, we're going to get underneath what is that, we're going to name it, and why it sets us off. Absolutely. So we all agree that that doesn't feel good, right? That somebody's saying you should do it this way and you're wrong. And so there it is. It's like it's a judgment, and their judgment is you are wrong. There's something wrong with you. It's invalidation, Tony.
Yeah.
So it's not a simple thing, it's a big thing. It's invalidation of who you believe yourself to be, invalidation of your worth, invalidation of your self-concept. That's why it's a trigger. Invalidation, judgment.
Mm.
I'm going to share mine. I become triggered when my daughter, my mother, my hubby, or other people fail to own their shortcomings and project onto me. When I'm triggered, I feel angry. I get hot like a volcano. My Caribbean blood starts to boil. I react by switching track, defending myself, giving shit back. Don't try to hold me hostage for your shortcomings, I might say.
Mm.
That was my typical response. But I'm growing my awareness. I'm doing better. And so now I say something like, I'm not responsible for your decisions and your choices. It's your responsibility to blank, not mine. So rather than erupting like a volcano and putting it back at you, I recognize, oh, I see what they're doing. That's their woundedness. That's their hurt. And I am not going to accept that. Yeah. I had to get to that place. I had to stop reacting, especially with my daughter. I say A, she Z. I mean, it's combative. And I decided I had to interrupt that pattern. Yeah.
I guess we're on the mom thing too, because I really didn't even have to take much notes. I was just because I've been playing with this too, this whole idea of triggers.
Mm.
So we're spot on the topic tonight. So thank you for that, Glenda.
You're welcome.
But yeah, it was my mom too. I become trigger, I feel like, and when you said invalidation, that just hit it right on the head. It was just like aha, like that's it. No matter whatever the situation is and however I show up, whether it's in conversation or physical space, you just don't feel like whatever you're saying is being recognized and really like they're giving some respect to how you might feel in a situation. It's always, well, you shouldn't, and or defending another person. Well, they didn't mean that, and it's however you're feeling, you're not allowed to feel, and make sure you know that. So I get triggered where I get defensive. All of a sudden, I'm giving so many examples of why this, whatever the situation is, warrant my reaction. How could you not see this? And I get really defensive. So I know I start doing that a lot. And then in turn, I then start putting down like the person, like, well, they're not this and they're not that. And I really don't expect you to even understand. And, you know, then it becomes a really bigger thing. So it comes from one, like you said, a situation triggered it, and then it just seemed like it's a bomb went off.
And then you get ensnared in this downward spiral of negativity, and there's your default, and there are the emotions charging.
And I'm hitting
right?
back, like you
and
said.
You're hitting back. You're hitting back to do what? To protect yourself. Yeah? To protect yourself from what we're perceiving to be an assault, an offense, an invalidation, natural instinct, self-preservation. Yeah.
I want to add as well. I'm
Go
sorry,
ahead,
if you have to
Corinne.
continue, you can. Okay.
No. Go ahead, Corinne, please.
I very similarly to everyone else here in terms of mom or parents in general, but it's very
That's our
triggering
theme this
for me
evening.
because I don't hear from them often. That's the theme. We are on it tonight. And
We are.
my parents have a way of trying to take I guess take hold of your achievements as their own, right? So, oh wow, you're that smart because of me, or okay, you were able to finish that because of me. And it's like, yes, you did your part by bringing me in this world, but then after that, it was kind of like you're on your own. So these, yes, your circumstances that were out of my control at the time, it may have encouraged or influenced the person that I am now, but you did not have a direct role necessarily, like hands-on in terms of where I am now. So that is really, really triggering for me. And again, with the snapping back, or I may just completely just block them so that you can't reach out to me and disturb whatever piece or element I'm in.
And one of the things that I had to learn was not only self-compassion, but self-compassion for, let's say, the offender, for lack of a better word. Because once I started to understand that wounded people wound other people, whether intentionally or not, I started to see the wound. And I can now have compassion for that person, and I try to lean into that compassion. So you think about it, why would a parent need to claim a child's accomplishments? You think about that. What might that suggest about the parents, about their own worth, their own sense of self? So it's one thing to say, I'm so proud of my baby, she went through college. But most people would say, she's so smart, she works so hard, she didn't give up. The light is on you. But when you have a parent that's claiming your accomplishments as their own, what might that suggest to you about the parent? So it's not rhetorical, Corinne. I want you to try to just kind of take a guess around that.
Their own sense of worthiness, a lot of vicarious living, trying to live out things through you if they weren't able to accomplish it themselves.
Yeah. And also if they were either young parents or if they weren't allowed to make their own decisions, and so their life didn't pan out the way they wanted. Yeah. And so they're trying to seek some of that light for themselves. So it's no right or wrong. It's about understanding the human behavior and what motivates people to make certain choices. So when you have that framework now, and your parents come to you and they go, oh, Corinne founded Royal Roots and she's making these amazing products. You know, she's the founder of this company. You can recognize that there's some pride there, but you can also recognize that there's a sense of loss, right? That they perhaps didn't get to follow their own path. And because they haven't really dealt with their stuff, they don't know how to communicate that. These are all theories. You don't have to accept them.
No, but they're all.
But that's
they're
my
all
hunch.
dead on.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is very big, Glenda, because a lot of times we're not thinking. They're trying, like the kids would say, you're trying to get shine off me.
Yeah.
And then in essence, that's what it is.
Yeah. I created you, so whatever you do is part of me. Except I'm not going to claim your bad behavior. That's you. I'm going to take your accomplishments, but not your bad behavior. Go figure. I want to zoom in on the. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Imani.
No, I said good point. They don't take the bad behavior.
Oh no, nobody's responsible for bad. Just the good stuff. I want to zoom in on this graphic on the bottom because I think it's a really nice synopsis for us to understand what's happening with the trigger. So the trigger is not the other person or the situation. It's not our mother, right? It's not our sister. It's not the boss. But they are the match because there's something within us that we're bumping up against. Our self-concept, what we hold dear, our values. So that trigger is being set off. It's a friction in terms of how we see ourselves, how we value ourselves, what matters to us. And then if there's a wound, well, they're just rubbing alcohol in that raw wound, right? So it's like, yeah, we haven't done the work to release that wound, then we're going to be set off even more. So the trigger is bumping up against some belief, some notions we hold about ourselves. And that belief then is manifested in our body as emotions, right? We sort of act out. We get angry, we lash out, we're being hurt, we're going to protect ourselves. And then that leads to the reaction. So it's the emotion that then creates the reaction. So earlier we were talking about interrupting the pattern. That's why the awareness is so important, because once we have the awareness, it's like, oh, what is it that my mother is doing there that's sending me off? Oh, it's the invalidation. Okay, I get that now. All right, well, what do I want to do with that information? Yeah. So the belief that we're holding is what causes us to have that reaction, to have an emotion, to have a feeling, and then to react. I'm going to go to the second part. There's that volcano, right? A volcano, there's that the magma chamber where that volcano, it's there. It's always there, right? Those plates begin to collide, and in that space that's created, the lava shoots out, right? We want to get to the underlying causes. So here's the second part. I perceive what my mother, my boss, blah, 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 whoever the situation is saying or doing as an injury or an offense to me because. And then you can go on and say, what are you now realizing? All right. Part two. Who'd like to share what you reflected on there?
I'll start.
Thanks, Corinne.
I said, I perceive what my parents are saying or doing as an injury or offense to me because it invalidates the work that I've put in, and it shows their lack of acknowledging their role or lack thereof in parenting. And I now realize that I do need to offer them more compassion, but even offer myself compassion as well in that situation if I do feel, if I am triggered, because they won't acknowledge it. They won't, I can't be responsible for them acknowledging that, knowing that it may be their capacity. Like I probably need to do more releasing of expectations of them, in other words,
Mm,
so that I don't set myself up.
mm. That last part you said is so important there. And also, what's getting triggered is they're our parents. We have expectations of them, don't we? That they will care for us, they'll protect us, they'll nurture us, right? They will help us to grow to be well adapted human beings. And when we don't, when those expectations aren't met, there's anger, there's disappointment. So part of what's coming up is like, you didn't do your job. Look at you, and you're trying to steal my shine. How dare you? But then you said, I need to release some of those expectations, and I can start centering my own acknowledgement and self and compassion for them. Wow, that's big, Corinne. That's huge.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So thank you, Corinne, for that. That was very helpful. That we can change our expectations of other people. And I think just reflecting on this thing that happens, and I'm old enough now where it's happened. My mother's 93, and we're still doing the same
Wow.
thing together. Um,
Bless her.
yeah, yeah, she's a terrific person. I don't mean this is like this negative rant because there's something that happens when people interact and they get triggered. Like, where is this coming from? But I think it goes to the idea of when someone takes away your feeling of competence and you start feeling flawed or like you're a failure, and it's like you're constantly looking for this thing outside of yourself as a form of approval because
Mm.
maybe you don't really approve of yourself, and so you're constantly looking for it. And so I think that's a big thing for me, thinking about going through this process, um, that I don't have to look for approval in other people. I mean, I should know this. I guess I know it intellectually, but I don't know it emotionally. And it's
Mm.
what you don't know in your, like the deepest parts of who you are that
Mm.
constantly trip you up. Um, yeah.
Wow. That's really profound, Tony. And I also noticed there that you were also judging yourself when you said should, talking about that. It's not, you know what you know in the moment that you know it, right? There is no timetable for when we know certain things. But I'm wondering now, Tony, if you could draw any parallels between your mother's judgment of you and your drive for perfection.
Yeah. I think that it's inextricably bound together, and this idea that you're looking for approval because you never feel worthy, and you never feel worthy because you can never be someone else's ideal, whatever that ideal is. And so I think it
Ooh.
goes back to knowing yourself and being satisfied with who you are, and that all goes back to self-care. So the whole thing goes right back to the essence of, if you've never learned how to take care of yourself, it means you've never learned to really look at yourself or understand yourself, to forgive yourself, and all those things are critical. I don't know, for feeling good about yourself and feeling competent, so that someone can't take away your feelings of competence by 3 words or whatever it is. It's like all of a sudden it's gone, like a lifetime of accomplishment disappears because someone um, has certain patterns of behavior.
Tony, always, you're saying a mouthful there, and I just quickly scratched 2 things down here. That you can never be someone's ideal of you. You can never be someone's ideal of you. And here we go right back to this notion of really what it means to self-care. Developing, cultivating your own sense of self, your own worthiness. That is your inside job. And nobody can give that to you. And no one can take it away from you. Not your mother, your grandmother. That is the inner work right there. We can never, ever be anyone's ideal of us. And when we aspire to do that, we betray ourselves and we get in trouble. And then you said, Tony, that someone can't take away your competency. Yeah. They can't take it away if you own it and you sit in it. Yeah. Exactly right. This is self-care. Truly self-care, defining that self-concept, knowing who you are, being rooted in that self, so that when you see your mom, and again, she may not know that she's doing this. She may have had, her upbringing could have been that she was invalidated. So that became her cultural conditioning. And that becomes the legacy we pass on generation after generation. And we live these patterns thinking that that's who we are, and that we can't change them. But we're here today to interrupt that and to claim for ourselves who we are and who we want to be. Really powerful awareness there, Tony. Good for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm going to share what
I just want to make a comment. I'm
go ahead,
sorry, go
Corinne.
ahead.
No, please, go ahead.
Just based on what you said, Tony, because it really was so profound and it was just setting off light bulbs like back to back. A lot of times so much of your self-worth and just how you learn to care for yourself, as you said, really goes back to childhood. And a lot of those expectations are even built on this conditional love. I'm not going to, celebrate you unless you bring home this. I won't do this for you until you do that. And that's what a lot of self-care becomes these days, right? I'm not gonna, for a lot of people, I'm not attracted to you until you look like this, or I can't, love you in the house this way because unless you cook, dinner. So it becomes this full spiral effect of all these things that literally are like directed back to just the attachments and the relationships that you have grown up from home. So that was like pivotal for me just now.
Mm-hmm. Raise your hand if you experienced conditional love growing up. Yeah, look at that. All of us except Rachel. Oh, that was big in my house. You had to figure out what pleased my mom. You could never win that game because it changed from day to day. And so you're trying to figure out what pleases her. Because when you do something that pleases her, she loves you. And she'll say, I love you. Oh, great. But the minute you do something that displeases her, there is immediate retribution. There's penalty. There's name calling around that. Yeah. Right? And so you learn to love. Oh, you understand. Oh, love is conditional. I do something that pleases you, I get this. And if I do something that displeases you, there's a swift punishment and judgment. All the ways that we've learned to invalidate ourselves, right? To become schizophrenic, if you will, seeking that external validation from other people because our parents didn't fill us up, right? And again, this is not to say our parents are good or bad people. This is not a judgment. This is just explaining like what happened, the cultural conditioning, and how that script is still running so many of our lives, and we're not children anymore. We've got to interrupt. That's what we're doing here today. Yeah.
So what I thought about it, what the person's saying or doing, again, we're talking our mothers. So I think I always look at it as an offense to me because I'm like, you've done so much already. So it's like you're adding. So it's like sometimes it can be the smallest thing, but because I'm already coming from a sense of this is just more. So now I'm even more hurt, if that even makes sense. It's kind of like, what more can you do? Oh, you did that. Now it can be the smallest thing. And, sometimes it's like I ask myself, why did you get so worked up about it? And you're like, oh, because I'm still haven't healed from probably the last situation. So it can be, you just maybe like I started noticing, I just put it into an example. Like my mom would always call me with her stuff, what's going on with her and her issues and who she has a problem with. And I'm like, well, how come you don't ask about me and what's going on with me? And then I find myself in the conversation waiting for that to happen. And then when it don't, you kind of feel a sense of, well, I don't know. So two things, I guess I went off on a tangent with that because that came in. But I'm like, well, what about me? It's always about you. So I feel like when she does something, it's adding on to what you've already done that I haven't fully healed from, or maybe I'm just accepting it, and now it's something else. So it always seems like it offends me. They always say you get so easily offended. So that's why I'm thinking maybe it's because I feel so raw already and not really healed from past stuff that I'm not able to accept flipping stuff like regular. I'm it's a little more hurtful to me. And I'm real sorry, I thought you said something, Glenda.
Yeah, I was going to say they're sticking that finger in that wound, right? Putting that, rubbing alcohol in that raw wound.
Adding insult to injury.
And adding insult to injury. So it's not a small thing, it's the cumulative history. It's who you and they have been, the pattern that you're responding to. Absolutely.
Yeah, so sometimes it just seemed like they'll just say, well, you're taking it to a next level. I didn't mean that. And sometimes it's no, they didn't mean that, but because of the history, like you said, it's I don't know if that's a fair thing for them, because people say you forgive and forget. So at what point are you no longer raw? So
you got to do the work so that you're not raw.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do.
That's part of what we're doing here. Absolutely.
To the rescue.
Yes, we got to do that work.
Do the work.
Exactly. Getting clear about the triggers. Exactly. Thinking about it, what's underneath, so that you don't continue to respond from that default.
But I think what I'm realizing now, the second part, is that I'm looking for things that maybe someone's not capable of giving it to me the way I want it. No, that's
Say more about that.
That's what I'm grappling with now.
Say more about that. What do you mean?
Like, the way I perceive a mom to be and the way that I am as a mom is not who she is. And sometimes now I'm realizing, you know what? Maybe I'm the mom I am because of her. So it's kind of a good thing for me, because I just don't want to be that mom.
Here's what I want to say about that, and I wonder if other people have this experience. I said often to myself growing up, like, I don't ever want to be the kind of mom that my mother was to me. Can I show a hand if you kind of had that vision or you made that proclamation? Yeah. And raise your hand if you found that you ended up in some ways being the mom that you did want to be. Yeah. Because part of it is we began by saying what we don't want, but we didn't set a vision for who we wanted to be. So we're working against the grain, from the default, from the negative, what we don't want, but having yet affirmed what it is we want to be as moms. And then we didn't necessarily couldn't figure out at the time, like, what was it, the triggers? Why are we behaving this way? We hadn't unpacked those issues. So we had the cultural conditioning, and we didn't have the affirmation to support us going forward. So we live the paradigms that we know. We live the paradigms that we know. And in those moments that I heard my mother coming out of my mouth, talking to my daughter, thinking I was such a progressive parent, oh my goodness. It's like, psh, Not progressive enough. We live the paradigms that we know. And that's what we're doing here to get clear about those paradigms and to interrupt them. I want to share what I wrote for this section. I perceive what my daughter, mother, hubby is saying, doing as an injury or offense to me because I don't control their lives. People are responsible for their own actions and behavior. So don't put your stuff on me. And I'm now realizing that I've since discovered, it's been a while since I've made this discovery, that values like fairness, justice, and self-accountability matter to me. So I get triggered because they're bumping against my self-concept, values that I hold dearly. No, self-accountability, that's about you. So don't put your stuff on me. So my values, they're bumping up against my values and how I see myself, right? And that's what's going on with the trigger. So self-concept, values, which are connected to your self-concept, and also lingering wounds, right? So we get triggered. Let's go now to a new vision, because we have a lot of experience with the trigger and the behavior that we don't want. So now we want to start creating space for what we do want. So I'd like you to complete this on your own. Going forward, now that you know, going forward, when I encounter my mother, right? This person, this situation, when I interact with them, I want to experience what? And here's the key, affirmative language, not what you don't want, but start off by saying what you want. It's okay to say not this, but start affirming it. That's the vision. And once you have that vision for what you want, the experience you want, now you're thinking about, now you've got this newfound awareness about the trigger, about yourself and what you want. What are you committed to doing to either manage or eliminate the trigger? How are you going to do that? What are you saying? What are you doing? Try to be specific and try to think about 1 to 2 things. Oops.
Glenda, maybe while the others are still completing, I'll just share with you
Yes.
how mine's been a double whammy, I think, of realization through these listening in on these conversations, because my story was actually around something my daughter did that triggered me.
Mm.
And I realized it afterwards, and I actually apologized to her about it and kind of used it as a, hey, mummy's human too. So it was kind of a learning for me as well, but I brought it up as a trigger. But it's just so profound how as mothers we can impact our children so much with all the other things that everybody else has been talking about, and how I mean, we don't always get it right. Kind of similar to what you were saying before, we can have this intention of being the mother we want to be, or the one that you don't want to, you know, mirror your own, or you see someone else you want to be like, whatever it is. But it's hard work, you know, and particularly under pressure or stress, or where you don't have a lot of time to give yourself the space to try and do it the way you might like, you do revert back to type. And so like mine was simply like around a whole birthday cake scenario, but it was from my perspective, it's about perfectionism and wanting it to look a certain way because of my own need for it to be the way I wanted it to be, which was squashing her creativity or her even just desire to help. And all of a sudden I could see her welling up because I was under pressure and frustrated and stressed about getting this done and having it done the way I wanted it to be. But actually it's okay for it to potentially be her way or not perfect, because it didn't really matter, you know. So it was really listening to just the impact we have on as mothers. It could have been that simple thing around the birthday cake, but God forbid that she'd carry that through her life because her mother was being a perfectionist, you know. Near enough is good enough. So it's just, thank you everybody for sharing what you've shared as well. It's just, being a mother is it's hard work.
It's hard work. But Rachel, in that story, what's so important and profound is the humanity. It's about recognizing that you made a choice that didn't honor you or your relationship with your daughter, and you went back to apologize. And that's one of the steps I actually added here in part 2 in terms of what I'm committed to doing. That is one of the areas that really upset me about my upbringing with my mom. She was never wrong about anything, even when she was clearly wrong, and she never apologized. And so as a kid, I didn't have the language for it, but it didn't feel good in my spirit. And as I got older and I started doing this inner work, I realized again my value of justice, of fairness. There's something really cruel about being unjust or unfair to someone and not taking responsibility. A mother, she never said she was wrong or sorry. And so you can temper the fact that as a parent, we don't always get it right. We don't always make the right choices with, but my mother always came back and owned her shit, right? She tried to do the best she can. You can marry those things. But when you never apologize and you're high and mighty, it's really hard to sort of heal and move on from that space.
Yeah. So then you can probably blame your grandmother as well, because that's probably how your mother was also brought up.
Yeah,
It's that
absolutely.
generational thing that you were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. Who'd like to share part 3? What's your new vision? What do you want to work towards? Go, Corinne.
I can share. I'm hoping going forward to have more peace, joy, love, laughter, and compassion in our interactions. And I can do this by making sure I ground myself before interacting with them. Like if I know I'm going to be around someone or something that's really going to get me going, to just take a moment, do some breath work, maybe sit with my certain crystals or essential oils to make sure that my emotions stay down and that I'm not all in my head about the situation. Also, humanize them. This is similar to what, I'm sorry, she was just speaking. I totally lost track of her name for a second.
Rachel?
Um, to, yes, Rachel. To parents realize that they make mistakes too. So that may also look like offering them an affirmation. Perhaps they never got that growing up. So you can now offer and kind of set the tone for what your relationship looks like by setting the example for them or being a role model. And also just setting better boundaries. Perhaps I won't share everything with them that I know they may try to take as their own. So you'll know certain things and maybe not the entire picture.
So lovely, Corinne. And I want to loop back to what Imani had talked about when we were talking about the Costco situation with the cart. She was like, well, what do? You know, how do you respond? Do you combat somebody? And what you talked about there again is the intentionality. Well, I know I'm going to have this interaction. So there is being proactive. Get yourself ready. And you said, I'm going to ground myself with some breathing. You're the founder of Royal Roots. You founded that company to do your own spiritual healing. So you've got your oils, you've got your incense, you've got your candles. So you've got tools that you can draw from to help you ground yourself. And I heard you say humanize them. We do have expectations of our parents, but we also then don't see them as human beings. And as human beings, they're flawed too. They're beautiful and flawed. And you said humanize them. And so if you humanize them, Corinne, you're saying I'm creating a space now to perceive them differently and have a relationship. But then how smart you are, you said, but I'm going to set boundaries. Yeah? Because I don't need to be up in their face all the time and they don't need to know everything. So now with this new framework and mindset, now I can say, here's how I'd like to interact with you. And here's when we're not going to interact. So who has the self-agency there? Yeah. Who are you controlling? Yeah, you, not other people. Really profound. Nice work there. Wonderful. Wow. Who'd like to go next? Let's hear your vision. Go, Imani.
So, well, my vision, I was thinking, well, the first part was how do you want to, when you around this person, how do you want to feel? So my thing was I wanted to feel validated, I wanted to feel supportive, and I wanted to feel ultimately loved, right? I wanted to have that come across. And so now what I'm realizing, because of my trigger, when I don't have those feelings, what happens is I think, just like Corinne was saying, she's going to center herself before the conversation. So you got to be so mindful showing up in the space with these people because they're going to trigger you, right? So I have my Apple Watch. I know this is going to sound so silly, but it's so real, right? So it has a breathing app on there and it pops up all the time. It tells you when to breathe. So a lot of times now when I'm having conversations, I'll look down on my watch and I feel, do I need to breathe? So that's making me feel mindful in a conversation with anyone.
Yes. Yes.
But sometimes I know I can flip and don't realize it until I'm in the moment arguing.
Yeah.
So in a regular conversation with my mother, I'm going to have to breathe. I'm going to have to take a pause and just breathe for that moment and hear what she's saying and think about how I'm reacting. If I'm being triggered, I'm just going to have to leave the conversation because I'm not able to manage how she and I show up in that space. I have to leave the conversation.
So I'm hearing,
that's how I'm thinking my boundary has to be, where I'm gonna say like, and I thought about even how to say it, I don't want to, you don't even say I don't want us to get into something. You just say, I really do have something to do right now. Can we just put this conversation for another time? And I don't, like you said, from the beginning, I'm not really responsible for how they feel because I want to leave the conversation. So that's how I kind of tied it all into.
so you're setting boundaries there, but I want to go back to what you said in the beginning. You said, I want to feel, and that says I want to experience. Feelings are, we're responding to other people, right? So it's an external response, this idea of feeling, mental association. So that means somebody else can manipulate what you experience. I want you to say, what do you want when you communicate with your mother? What is the experience you want? So you say validation, that means that's somebody else doing that for you. This is about you coming from within. So what do you want to experience when you talk to your mom?
I want to feel like if I'm being clear, well, you know what? When I speak with her, I just have to feel like, regardless if she agrees or not, I'm just going to have to get my point out.
So what do you want to experience? I want to experience
Grappling with it.
a conversation where
Like whatever my views are, I just feel like she's accepting of it and not judging of it. And I feel somewhat validation in however I feel what I'm telling her.
so again, you're wanting your mom to validate you. This is about you're taking control. So what do you want to experience when you talk to your mom?
I guess I'm going to just have to understand how she's not going to be able to validate me. I don't know. I'm just in the middle of this work, so I don't really have the right words to say how I want to feel.
Okay, so I want you, that's fair, that's good. I want you to put a star there. And some other time come back to it, because right now you're still saying, I want my mom to make me okay. That's not necessarily a vision, right? That's continuing a pattern, right? That puts your mother in the driver's seat, and that gets you responding like a little girl. You're a fully grown woman. And that's sometimes we have to make that adjustment when we talk to our parents, just like we're coming from that little girl space and not from the fully grown woman that we are. So put the asterisk next to that one and come back. I want to experience what kind of conversation. It's not dependent on what your mom does or says. So give yourself time to think about that. Great.
Okay.
Tony,
Just,
did you?
if it's okay, sorry, just to share with Karen too, that I think a lot of it comes back down to being clear on your expectations of your mom, and then really thinking about how much of that she may or may be able to actually offer for you. I had an experience with my own father actually, and when it surfaced enough for me to have the courage to have the conversation with him, he said to me, you know, I said to him actually, you know, I have you up on this pedestal and you've really disappointed me, and explained why. And he said to me, well, I think step one is for you to actually take me off that pedestal, because I'm actually now, as adults, you're equal, and I make mistakes and I am human, and your expectation of me is not realistic. And that's what I took away from that conversation. And once I readjusted, doesn't mean I don't get disappointed, and it doesn't mean sometimes I still kind of have this expectation of him as a parent, but you know, like it just resonated with me, because I was like, oh, you know what, he's actually right. And I was being a little bit unfair because he had his own stuff that he was dealing with. So I just wanted to share that, because, you know, if at some point you don't have a think about whether there is reality around what you are expecting of your mum, you'll always be disappointed.
And Rachel, the word that Corinne used the word earlier, humanize. And I think that's what your father was saying, humanize me. I am not perfect. I cannot be perfect. And it's these expectations that we're wedded to that really get us into trouble. We've got to relax those expectations and think about, what do we want for ourselves? Yes. Tony, you wanted to share.
Yeah, Amani, I know to show you, you probably can't see this, but these are my notes. Like, my brain is exploding, and I don't know what I think.
That's great. That's great.
Like from the emotions I'm feeling and the things that have been sparked in me based on what people are saying. That this idea that my awareness is not her awareness. Like what I think and what I know, thinks and what she knows, and it's like I treat her like she should know what I know and think the same way, but she doesn't. And so I was trying to go back and think of when have I been successful in interactions like this with her. And I'll give an example. And the example was when I say to her, "Oh, you look wonderful," or "Oh, this is terrific," or whatever I say, and she'll give me 9 million reasons why it isn't. I gained pounds, I'm this, I'm not, I'm the other thing. And one day I just said to her, Mom, when people compliment you, it's normal to say thank you, because it's not about all this other stuff you want to be or do or whatever. And so she then started saying to me, if I said something, complimented her, she'd say thank you, and then she'd say, "Did you notice I said thank you?" And so what I'm thinking my work is, because I'm not ready to answer some of these or make my list, I think my work is in the conversations, and I might even record them. I know that, maybe that's not a great thing, is to listen to her words, to record her words, and to see where am I getting triggered and why am I getting triggered? And then I know what to be prepared for, because, this whole conversation, I don't even know why I feel what I feel. I just feel it. And then I'm in that space. And so I think I need to do work on my end before I can hope to change what's happening on her end. So that's where I am.
Yeah, and remember, this is really profound what you're saying, Tony, and thank you for being so forthcoming about that. You're like, I'm all over in terms of my thoughts and my emotions. I'm grappling with so many things, and so I'm not able to put my finger on it right now. That's the disequilibrium, right? That is the work. That's the space where we got to get in and do that work. So it's okay if it's not coming to you right now, but you've begun to engage in that work. And the other thing I wanted to say, I'm forgetting now, where you said at the end to change her. And remember, we don't have control over that. And so focus on what will Tony's work be with her mom? What will that interaction be with my mom? What kinds of expectations are driving my interactions with her? Yeah. And how do those expectations set me up for disappointment, for heartache, put me back in that triggered automatic response?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
feel like if I can change my behavior, it'll somehow impact her behavior. But until I can change my own behavior, I have no control over what she says or does. And that's,
Yeah. And this idea, and I think Corinne alluded to that earlier, this idea that we can be the models for our parents, right? Like we can be the model for how to heal our wounds, to release the pathology. We can be a new paradigm in our family. And I think that's a big part of my work. I know that's a big part of what Corinne is doing, interrupting the generational pathology. We're operating from these cultural conditioning scripts and we don't know it. Yeah, so it's all default all the time. But when we pause and we do the work, we can present a new vision. We can grow into new ways of being to teach our family. So it's not about controlling them. It's about be the change you want to see, that cliche, right? And yes, your awareness is not necessarily their awareness. So even as you're making this change, they're still reacting to you from their own paradigm. So they may not see that change. And so that's part of the boundaries we have to communicate. I've been working on this. Let me tell you what I've been working on. And as a result of that work, here's how I'm thinking it could be useful for us to interact going forward. You got to bring them along with your journey because they don't know. They don't know. Yeah. So I'm going to share a little bit of what I wrote in the last section, and then we're going to go right into boundaries because this gets us right there. So I wrote, going forward, I want to experience a more calm, this is me, I can control this, a more calm, measured response that sparks awareness in the person rather than defending myself. And what can I do? Corinne talked about grounding. That was the first thing I said, pause and breathing. If I know I'm going to have a conversation with my mom, it's like, okay, usually I go, oh God, my mom's calling. So then I'm ready, triggered. So it's like, take a breath, watch my language, pay attention to my words, my tone. I got to get ready for that conversation. It's not going to necessarily be an easy one, right? So taking the time to be proactive, pause and breathe. And Rachel mentioned this earlier. Even with my best intentions, I can still default. And then I got to take responsibility and say, oh, you know what, Mom? I'm sorry. I've been working on that and I don't want to respond that way anymore. Let me tell you what I've been working on. I've been trying to be this kind of person. You got to own it and have that humility, because that's what gives them permission to see you differently and know that they can be and do that as well. So you got to own your shit. Yeah. And then the third thing I said was the boundary piece. Let the person know what I'm learning, what I'm hearing from them, and what I can and will not accept. But I can't do that unless I'm first clear myself about what I want and who I want to be. So let's get into some boundaries. I think this is going to shift the energy a little bit. Yeah. So what we've just done in this third part is really about setting intentions and making a commitment for what we want to experience, including establishing boundaries, right? And I think Tony said it earlier, to really care for ourselves and our well-beings and to live our values. We're going to need these values. That's what self-care is all about. So I like to share what I call I like to offer you a boundaries bill of rights to support us in the work that we're doing and in your wellness journey. I want you to get used to the idea that you have boundaries rights, fundamental to who you are and protecting yourself. Shoot this over here. Healthy boundaries help us experience comfortable interdependence with other people. A person with no boundaries is unable to prevent unwanted intrusions. Whoa. So says Marian Franklin, master coach and author. What I'm going to share from you comes from Marian's work. The ideas were informed and shaped by her work. You have a right to set a boundary to protect yourself. Oh, sorry. I've just put in the chat the link, so if you want to print out that form, you can. You have a right to set a boundary to protect yourself. To set a boundary is to inform, but be aware that others may disregard it. Yeah, you're setting a boundary and they're like, I don't care. That's not what I expect of you. I'm going to keep interacting with you the way I know you to be. You have a right to share a consequence if your boundary continues to be violated. So if your mom keeps calling Imani and she's keep just talking about herself and not saying, my daughter, how are you today? What's going on? You have a right to say, Mom, you know, I welcome an opportunity to talk to you, but I'd also like to share with you a little bit about my life if you're interested. And if that can't happen in our conversation, I'm afraid we won't be able to have conversations anymore. You have a right to share a consequence. You're not a doormat. You have a right to enforce the consequence. So not only say it, but say, I'm going to do it. I let you know, and now I'm enforcing it. You have a right to do that. And you also have a right to change your mind. Make mistakes and own them. Say, I don't know. And that's kind of like what Imani did here today. She's like, I don't know yet. It's okay. You have a right to say you don't know. Ask for more time. And this is really important when people are expecting you to do something, or a boss is offering you to take on particular projects and tasks. and you don't have an answer yet, you can say, I need some more time to think about it. Give yourself space to respond versus react. You have the right to not offer excuses. Hey, come to this party with me, or do this thing for me. Oh, sorry, I'm not able to do it. You don't have to offer a reason for why you don't want to go to the party or why you don't want to do a thing. If you do, it's a courtesy, right? It's not an obligation. And you have a right to make a decision for yourself that honors who you are. Before we look at the next part, what are your thoughts about these boundaries, the Boundaries Bill of Rights?
I just love the not offer excuses. It's again also for me like a learned behavior, not to, well, firstly to learn how to say no and be comfortable with no, and then not feel like I have to actually justify my no either.
Yes.
You know, it should just be, sorry, I can't make it, and be comfortable with that and not feel guilty, that word again. To have to find the right excuse. It's even just for self-care would be okay. They don't need to know that, but
yeah,
no is okay.
Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, it's coming up for the rest of you. You're seeing these as rights. This idea that you have rights around boundaries. You can set consequences. You can enforce them.
I think this is interesting because a lot of us were just speaking about our parents or just parenting in general. And I think as parents, though, I know for my parents, just the background culturally, you kind of forget that, yes, you brought this child into this world, but you are a teacher or a guide for this child. And so the lines can get blurred from just really young about what your boundaries are with yourself, with other people, and in terms of like what your own competency can be. And I think it's important to have it with your parents. I mean, just everyone in general. I was going to say something else in particular about it in response to what Rachel just said, but some of it just got away. But the no, you get wrapped around sometimes with how ill you used to feel receiving no from youth or from whatever circumstance that you sometimes hate to use it, but it almost is like you need it to like keep yourself safe and guarded so that you're not overwhelmed and just broken down.
Self-care, protecting
Yes.
yourself, your sense of self. You said something really important here. You talk about, this idea of cultural conditioning. And I know for so many of us growing up in a Caribbean household, African-American household, those of us who come out of Black culture, there's this, we hear constantly, right? This idea that I am the authority. I brought you in this world. I can take you out.
Yes.
And
yes.
we aren't socialized with this idea that we have rights. Is the parents is the authority figure with the rights, and you have no rights. Whatever they say and do, be grateful for, right? They can do that to you. So this idea that you even have a right to talk back to your parent, even as an adult, you feel those emotions coming up. Oh, this is my mom. Can I even say this, right? So there's that work that we've got to do, cutting through the cultural conditioning, the paradigms that are running our lives. Yeah, this idea that we have rights, it's a radical idea. So in Marion's work, she didn't frame it as rights, right? She had a really nice section on talking about boundaries. It's the second most issue that people come to coaching around. The first is self-concept. The second is boundaries. So she was just writing some of these ideas about boundaries. And as I was reading them, what was screaming in my mind was, this is the Bill of Rights. How radical would it be to frame this as a Bill of Rights, to give people permission to say, you have the right to say no, right? You have a right to enforce a consequence. So I recomposed what she was offering, because to me it was screaming out as a Bill of Rights. Here's the other part to that as she was talking about boundaries, I just listed a few things about intimate relationships that could be useful as well. I think this is a document I'm going to come back and flesh out some more. You have the right to set time limits. So rather than saying, I'll just give the relationship more time to see how it works, you can say, I'm going to set about a 3-month, a 6-month, a year time limit. Let's see how things go. Let's see what the work is. And if it doesn't work out, it's time to move on. You can set time limits. The right to disown others' bad behaviors that we're talking about all night. You're not responsible for your partner's bad behavior. You're not responsible for your partner making you feel guilty, guilt tripping, right? That's your partner's issue. That's where your partner needs to do work. Don't own others' bad behavior. That's invalidation of yourself. That's giving away your self-agency. Your personal worth is a function of who you are as a spiritual being, and is not dependent on anyone or anything. No one can take that away from you. Yeah? So you don't need a partner to feel worthy. That's also a big mindset. I'm only somebody if I'm coupled, right? I'm only somebody if I've got a man, and therefore you overstay your welcome. We find ourselves in abusive situations, toxic situations, because our mindset says, I'm only somebody with somebody, no matter how poorly we're being treated. Yeah? You teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you stop, and what you reinforce. We are teaching people how to treat us all the time. What we allow, what we stop, what we reinforce. So says Tony Gaskins, motivational speaker, author, and life coach. Late is the hour. We've done a lot of digging. But I wanted to have a little bit of celebration before we get to the it. And well, let me tell you what I wanted us to do, and you tell me if you're up for it. I wanted us to sort of proclaim and celebrate the work we've been doing today, right? It's not easy work. We've been digging, and some things have been unearthed for us. We're feeling all kinds of emotions. We're in different places with our thoughts. And so I wanted us to be able to celebrate by proclaiming, by creating our own notes to self. So not somebody else, but our own notes to support us in our journey. And I wanted us to use an interactive tool, the Google Jamboard, where you could actually use Post-its to write your own notes, 1 or 2 notes for yourself. Are you interested in experiencing that? Or would you rather that we come to the raffle and bring the evening to our close? Whatever you want is okay. So tell me what you want.
I'm up for notes to self, writing that out.
Yeah, that's fine. Notes to self.
Okay. All right. Let's go to notes to self. All right. So let me put that chat. Let me bring that link for you. I am whole. Oh, it's so great. And don't forget to add your name. Aren't these Post-it notes so much fun?
They are.
All right. Let's just start popcorning out what you posted it for yourself. I don't see one for Rachel.
Rachel
She laughed.
Oh, she left. Okay. Okay. Yes. All right. Let's just start. Let's affirm and let's celebrate each other as we read out our Post-its. I'm going to make Tony's a little bigger. All right. Yes. All
Um,
right.
the pink one is the one I'd like to speak to. I want to operate from a place of understanding and compassion, and that'll help me find peace.
Whoa, yay! Can we clap for Tony? Yes. Operate from a place of understanding and compassion to find peace for you. That's within your control. Nice, Tony. Wonderful. Who else? Just popcorn out.
Oh my goodness.
To Corinne, Imani, what would you like to share? What are you affirming?
You're muted.
Oh, I am?
Sorry. No, it was me. I was muted.
Oh,
No, I was saying it's so much fun when you see your words in print. It just gives
mm,
it so much more power. Like,
mm.
I'm worthy. Yes, you are. It's mirroring back your
Yes,
words.
yes, own it, celebrate it, live in it.
Yeah, I'm
Absolutely.
worthy. I can simply say no and I don't have to explain why. You know, I deserve peace and joy and I don't need your permission. If I just don't want to do something, I don't have to. I deserve my peace. If I want to
Yes,
do something and you don't, that's fine. I deserve my joy. I can go without you.
yes. And you could do your own thing. Yeah? Yes. I am worthy. Nice. Corinne, what you got?
I am worthy and deserve unconditional love.
Mm,
I am grounded.
hmm. Yeah, and I'm going to piggyback on that one, Corinne, because I said I am love. It's the essence of who I am, right?
Uh,
Only I
Mm,
can validate myself. It's not my mother, whether she's withholding or not. We are the essence of who we are is love. I am in charge of my self agency. And that
Ashe.
means I am entitled to make my own decisions for the life I want to live. I live out my values. Wonderful. So
Very
in the
nice.
follow-up I send to you, I will also include the link for the jam board. So you will be able to see this streams of love. Yes, Tony, wonderful. So you will be able to see this exact board with these post-its when I include the link. All right, let's come back to our Zoom and begin to close out. You can just click on the icon and that should bring you right back. Yay! I want to celebrate you. I feel like we've done a lot of work this evening, just thinking about our triggers, what's underneath them, the role of cultural conditioning, other people expectations, our own beliefs, how all of these things conflate and work as obstacles to create that prevent us from living our truth, feeling whole, feeling valued. But what we did today was to begin to interrupt that, to interrogate those patterns, to interrupt them. So it's the beginning, right? One session won't do it. But I'm hoping that you now have some tools and some way of thinking about your triggers that you can begin to go back and do some more thinking around and actualize. So thank you for being here on a Friday night to do this really important, but can be challenging work. And so we promised that we were going to raffle off a basket. And I want to give Corinne an opportunity to talk about royal roots. So I'm going to go back and share those two slides, and then we're going to do a quick raffle. Thank you for your indulgence being here over our time this evening. So let me just go back to here. Uh, oops, here we go. And you're up. Corinne McLaughlin and Royal Roots.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Auntie, for facilitating this and holding space. This was a delight per usual. And now I'm like pumped and ready to get going as soon as I get off this Zoom call. And thank you as well to Tony and Imani for being here and sharing the space with us, because you both have been able to share a lot of insights as well that has set off a lot of light bulbs for me too. So thank you for sharing. My name is Corinne. I'm Glenda's niece. I started Royal Roots Co. last year. I should say rebranded. I had Royal Roots from back in 2016. I was just making body butters and soaps then. Last year, while diving deep into some spiritual work, I was called to rebrand that business and to pitch this. So it started about for me knowing that I needed to do some work myself, a lot of healing. I had a therapist, and even he asked, like, what are you doing sitting in here? So it didn't last really long. Eventually, I started to see a shaman who really helped me to remove a lot of things from a cellular level, genetic level, ancestral level, to free me up and free up my light body so that I can be who I am today, which is stepping into my purpose as a healer and helping people to heal and release things so that they can be the best selves, their lightest self possible. And so Royal Roots is a brand where I create spiritual luxury products to help to assist you along your journey, wherever that may be. So these are your everyday products, from soaps, body butters, bath salts, all infused with different energy and vibrations to help to heal and free you up. That could also be skin purposes, maybe making your skin look a lot fresher. So without further ado, I would like to pull out this basket that I've created for our lovely raffle winner.
I got her.
I'm like ecstatic about this. These baskets, I put together baskets, and they like, I only will create a basket of something that I would want to receive myself. So this is the love that you're getting right here. It's a little bit different from that picture because I actually upgraded it as I was like putting it together. I'm like, wait a minute, I want these things in here as well. So it's everything in there plus a few more items, which I'm super excited about. So I
Well,
added in some
so
sure.
let me stop the share, Corinne, so that we can get you on the big screen and see that basket. Look at that.
Oh, I just dropped two things. Okay. Yeah, because this is phenomenal. So in this amazing basket, I've included, let me take this off blur. I'm not sure if you can see it completely. Let me see if I can just fix this in a second.
There.
Oh,
Wow, that's a lot
okay.
clearer. Yeah.
Perfect, a lot better. Okay, so I've added in a journal, of course, because we can always be taking notes, but the more you write things down, the more they can fall to fruition. And especially, just like Imani was saying, seeing this thing on the board and like reading it out loud. I'm a believer that you speak it out loud, you throw it out there to the wind, and the universe is going to catch it and throw it right back at you. So there's your journal for that purpose. There's also a face mask, all these things for self-love. Chocolate, because that's life.
Hello, you need chocolate.
Hello, you need chocolate.
Priorities.
That's right. Hello, get it together. A few soap bars. There's going to be 2 soap bars in there as well. This is an intention chakra oil. So there's herbs and crystals in here to help heal and open up your crown chakra. So this is your head chakra. Many of us, it seems like just from this alone, we're always in our head when these triggers come up. So this is going to really help you to come centered, be balanced, and to open yourself up to receive divine messages for your own guidance and just for your own spirituality in general. There's lavender essential oil in here, which is great. Very calming, very centering as well. So that was one of the things I changed in the basket, because I was going to add in lavender essential oil, but since it's in here, you can use this on your wrist, you can use it on your temples, your entire body. It's completely natural and organic. I exchanged the lavender essential oil for this candle, beautiful candle. It's a house clearing candle as well. So you can use this when you have these moments of triggered, or if you're going to be conversating or meeting with someone that's going to be triggering you, light this candle up to really ground yourself and lighten the mood. Really, it truly makes a difference. I know, at least for me. There's also a crystal bracelet in here. This one is an amethyst crystal bracelet for protection, for cleansing and intuition. I wear these on a regular. I wear these on a regular to help ground my energy as well. There's some also handmade earrings in here that a friend of mine makes. Um, I have here spiritual cleansing body wash. It's a sample of this, and also a sample of my lemongrass body wash. Those are my two personal favorites at the moment. There's also bath
Oh
salts
man.
yes, this is a loaded basket.
I know. I'm like,
Right? So you're getting, this is a true treat. I would be overwhelmed if I got something like this,
you're right when
honestly.
you
So I
said you
had to
did
do the
it with
same.
you in mind.
That's right. This is exactly something I would want to receive. So I wanted to send that same energy to you.
That's right.
These bath salts I'm in love with. These are actually called Sweet Love. They have rose absolute and jasmine essential oils. So I think it's perfect. Also, I was thinking about switching it out to a eucalyptus bath salt, but just hearing from the conversation with everyone, it sounds like a lot of us are still doing healing, or still needing at least some support and healing with our heart, and just dealing with relationships in general for self-love. So these bath salts are perfect for that specific purpose. And then also some incense, which are also great to help clear out your house and just get the smell and all the aromas going so that you can be as light and like grounded as possible. So good luck to whoever this amazing basket winner is going to be. I may come over and join you.
Can we? I first thank you, Corinne, for
You're so welcome.
that is the energy, what we can control, right? Putting out into the world what we want to receive. So putting that love and intention into that basket. I would want a basket like that. That's the motivation for creating a basket of love. So thank you for putting all those things together and being so
You're
thoughtful
welcome.
about switching out products. And then Imani typed something into the chat for you. Imani, do you want to share it?
Just saying, I'm so proud of Corinne. Antonia, I remember last year she was just talking about it when we were talking about the work we have to do on ourselves. And she was just like, yeah, this is a kick in the butt I need. So just seeing it and your beautiful vision and just your marketing, the color, your lilacs and your lavenders. And I am so proud of you. I'm just so proud of you that it's a year later and everything you said last year.
Yes.
It's here. Like it's literally tangible. And you're talking.
Thank you.
Last year you was telling us about it and now you're displaying it. So what a growth. Like kudos to you. Girl.
Thank you so much for acknowledging that. I appreciate it.
No, that's big. I know, man. You were planning this whole thing, telling us the crystals, the healing.
Yeah.
I remember just to see now you're displaying each product of what you were talking about. So it's so beautiful to see.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for you for that. Thank you.
So here's my cheers basket. There are some envelopes in here. Some of the folks didn't attend. I'm going to do a little shuffle here. They're not really tickets, they're envelopes. Cheers. Drum roll, please. So here's the envelope. Can you see that?
Congratulations, Tony.
Oh my God. Amani, sorry.
Get it. I was thinking to myself, if I get it, I'm giving it to her because her mom. I thought that to myself. So I'm so happy you got it. That's so sweet. Because I was like, I'm going to buy one and she can have one.
That is so sweet. Oh.
Yeah, Corinne, you have to make me a basket. I'll buy one of whatever is in that.
Absolutely.
Make me one and invoice me. I got it.
For sure. Thank you.
Congratulations,
Tony.
Now, do you sell those as gifts that someone can buy from your website?
Yes, I do. I do sell them as gifts as well.
That's nice. So I will pass on the joy.
Thank you. Thank you.
You should have put the link so I can get mine.
Oh, it's cool. Okay. Why don't you type it in the chat? Type the website into the chat there.
Sure.
And so what's going to happen, Tony? So we'll get your and maybe Tony can type her address into the chat, and Corinne is going to mail the basket directly to Tony.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you.
There you go.
Perfect.
Something to look forward
Upper West Side. I was like, what the hell is this? A company? So Manhattan Central. Upper
Oh,
West
yes. Mhm.
I know it's terrible when I go places and I say, yeah, I'm from the city, and they're like, the city?
Well, I just want to salute, acknowledge all of you for being here this evening, for staying the course. We're over the time that we allotted, and I want to respect your time. But you've done some really important work tonight. You've done some digging, and you've gained some new awareness and perspectives to support you in your journey. And that's what these events are all about, coming to new awareness. When we have new awareness, we now have an opportunity to do and be something different and better. So awareness is the catalyst, and then we have to commit to act on that. So I'm hoping that you found tonight's sip useful for you, and you have some work that you can go back and continue to do. So thank you for showing up, for being here. I will be in touch with you very soon with an email, with the handouts, with Corinne's information, um, so that we can continue doing the work. So beautiful, powerful, audacious woman. Thank you for being here. Um, I bid you a good night. I bid you power, onward, peace, and blessings. Thank you all so much for staying with us this evening.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you. Good
guys.
night.
Good
Night.
night. Ciao.
Thank you.
Bye.